What if the very ground beneath your feet whispered secrets of a forgotten past, urging you to listen before it was too late? I never believed in the old stories, not really. But then I found that journal beneath the twisted roots of a gnarled tree, its fingers like the grasping hands of the lost. The last entry, written in a language that sent chills down my spine, read, "The veil is torn, they walk among us." I shut the journal, and that's when I saw him, a translucent figure, a hunter from another time, pointing skyward as if warning me of the tempest that was about to unfold. My name is Taven Noes, a Métis forest ranger tasked with safeguarding the Great Bear Forest, a place sacred to the Haida people. After a suspicious wildfire took my team from me, I sought refuge in a small cabin, its walls adorned with intricate carvings of ancestral totems that seemed to murmur warnings in Haida. This forest, with its towering trees and dense underbrush, was both my home and my prison, filled with the weight of memories and the incessant whispers of the spirits that lingered. The air was thick with a sense of unease. I ventured out each morning, my heart heavy with grief. I walked through the so-called veil zones where animals were born without eyes and trees bled dark sap, their silent suffering a testament to the imbalance that had taken root. Tourists would come, drawn by the beauty of the forest, only to vanish without a trace, their bodies later discovered cloaked in a shroud of lichen, as if nature herself sought to reclaim them. Each disappearance was a wound that festered in my soul, a reminder of my own losses and the fragility of life, but today felt different. As I stood in the clearing, clutching the journal, the sky darkened with clouds that rolled in like a shroud. The wind picked up, swirling leaves into a frenzied dance, and I felt a tremor beneath my feet. A storm was brewing, but not just any storm. The air crackled with a heaviness that spoke of something ancient awakening, something that had lain dormant for far too long. When I turned to leave, I caught sight of the first hailstones, strange, otherworldly stones, each one marked with symbols I couldn't comprehend. They fell around me, clattering against the ground, like the desperate cries of the forest itself, a warning that I was no longer alone. The figure of the hunter lingered at the edge of my vision, his translucent form flickering like a candle in the wind, urging me to understand the gravity of my discovery. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the precipice of something monumental. The forest had always been a sanctuary, but now it felt like a ticking clock, counting down to an inevitable catastrophe. I thought back to the stories of my ancestors, the tales of the Haida, and their connection to the land, a connection that was fraying before my eyes. The veil, once a protective barrier, was now a conduit for something far more sinister. But as night fell, something inexplicable happened. The echoes of the forest took on a new tone as the darkness settled in around me. I felt the weight of the journal in my hands, as if it pulsed with a heartbeat of its own. The symbols etched into the hailstones were now vividly imprinted in my mind, whispering forgotten truths I was too afraid to confront. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the unknown that awaited me. As I approached the cabin, the wind howled, and I could hear the distant crackle of energy in the air. It was then that I noticed another figure at the edge of the clearing, a woman cloaked in shadows, her long hair cascading like a waterfall of night. She stood still, watching me, her eyes glimmering with an otherworldly light. I hesitated, my instincts screaming that I should flee, but the pull of her gaze rooted me in place. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice barely carrying over the tempest that brewed around us. She stepped forward, revealing herself to be a local historian named Ilara, someone I had heard whispered about in the village. They said she had an uncanny knowledge of the forest's secrets, the kind that transcended time. "I've been looking for you, Taven," she said, her voice smooth yet urgent. "You've stumbled upon something powerful, something dangerous." "What do you mean?" I demanded, my heart racing. I didn't trust her, yet I felt an inexplicable connection to her words. The journal you found is a gateway, Ilara explained, her expression serious. It contains the essence of those who have walked this land before us. The hunter you saw is one of them, a guardian who failed to protect this forest. The veil is indeed torn, and the spirits are restless. They seek balance, and you are their chosen vessel. Chosen vessel? I scoffed, the weight of grief and disbelief heavy on my chest. I'm just a ranger. I'm not anyone special. Perhaps not, but you are the one standing at the crossroads, she pressed. You must help them before it's too late. Before I could respond, a crack of thunder split the sky and the air shimmered with energy. The translucent figure of the hunter reappeared, this time more defined, his expression one of deep urgency. He pointed toward the darkening horizon, where shadows moved with an unnatural grace. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that something was emerging from the depths of the forest, from that very veil that had begun to unravel. Go! Ilara urged, pulling me back as a gust of wind surged toward us. We need to find shelter, and we must act quickly. The spirits aren't just restless, they're angry. As we rushed toward the cabin, the ground shook beneath our feet, and I couldn't help but feel the weight of my grief, my lost team, my solitude pressing down on me. I had always believed I could protect this forest, yet here I was, a mere mortal, at the mercy of ancient forces beyond my understanding. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Ilara rifled through her bag, pulling out a collection of herbs and small talismans, her hands moving with a practiced urgency. We need to create a barrier, she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. If we don't, the spirits will breach the veil completely, and we won't be able to stop them. Why me? I asked again, my voice cracking. What do you need me for? I don't have any power. Your connection to this land is stronger than you realize, she replied, her gaze piercing through my doubts. You are grieving, Taven, but that grief resonates with the past. The spirits can hear your sorrow, and they may be willing to listen. You can be their voice. The walls seemed to close in as I grappled with my own emotions, the fear of failure, mixing with the flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, I could make a difference. I glanced at the journal, its pages fluttering as if alive, and something shifted within me. The forest had always been my home, and now it needed me to be its guardian. As we prepared for the storm ahead, I could feel the forest's heartbeat, aligned with my own, a call to action that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Little did I know the choices we would make that night would irrevocably bind our fates to the very spirits we sought to placate. And as the shadows closed in, I understood that the true battle was just beginning. As Ilara worked with a fervor I couldn't quite grasp, I felt an unsettling shift in the air, a heaviness that clung to my skin, almost suffocating. The howls of the wind outside morphed into something more akin to voices, echoing through the cabin and sending chills down my spine. I glanced at Ilara, her face taut with determination, but there was something else. Fear, perhaps? I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not entirely alone. Let's hurry, she urged, her voice strained. We don't have much time. I nodded, but doubt gnawed at my mind. What if the spirits were not merely seeking balance? What if they wanted revenge? The hunter's frantic gestures replayed in my mind, and I felt the weight of my past crash over me like a wave. I recalled the night my team was lost, the shadows that had stalked us, the feeling of being watched. I had blamed myself for that tragedy, convinced I had failed to protect them. But what if it was more than mere coincidence? What if the forest had turned against us, fueled by some ancient grudge? Do you think the spirits can hear us? I blurted out, my voice shaky. What if they blame me for what happened? They know I was there. Ilara paused, her brow furrowing. They are complex beings, Taven. They can feel sorrow and anger, but they also sense truth. You must be honest. With them, I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What if my truth isn't enough? The energy in the room shifted again, and I heard a whisper, clear as a bell, echoing through the cabin. He's the one. The words wrapped around me, chilling my blood. I glanced at Ilara, who had gone pale, her eyes wide. What was that? I whispered, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. The forest remembers, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It remembers you, Taven, your past, the choices you made when you lost your team. I recoiled. Could the forest truly hold memories of that night? The guilt that had haunted me was now manifesting into something tangible. I felt the walls of my sanity begin to crumble, each crack revealing old wounds I thought I had buried. Wait, I said, my heart racing. What do you mean? What choices? Ilara stepped closer, her expression both sympathetic and pained. You were the last one standing. You made decisions that altered the course of their lives. You chose to investigate the shadows, didn't you? You led them into danger. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I remembered the argument we had, the insistence that we had to confront whatever presence was lurking in the trees. My need to prove myself had blinded me to the risks. My mind raced, grappling with the enormity of her words. Had I been the one to unleash this turmoil upon the forest? Just then, the shadows outside twisted grotesquely, and the hunter's voice filtered through the wind. You must atone. You have awakened us. A wave of panic surged through me, tightening my chest. The forest was alive with anger and anguish, and I was at the center of it all. I turned to Ilara, desperation flooding my voice. What do I do? How do I atone? Before she could answer, the cabin shook violently, and a chilling laughter echoed from the depths of the forest, reverberating through my bones. Something was coming, and I was not just a witness. I was part of this haunting, and the fate of the forest hung in the balance. The laughter echoed in the cabin like a sinister melody, and I felt my heart race as the shadows outside stretched and writhed, forming shapes that danced at the edge of my vision. I turned to Ilara, who stood frozen, her eyes locked onto the darkness. "Ilara!" I shouted over the cacophony, desperation clawing at my throat. "What do we do?" But she was lost in a trance, her lips moving silently as if she were invoking some ancient incantation. The weight of the forest's rage pressed down on me, squeezing my chest tighter with each passing second. I had to act, and I had to act now. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the air, slicing through the laughter like a knife. It was a sound of pure anguish, a cry that seemed to come from the very heart of the forest. My instincts kicked in, and I rushed towards Ilara, grabbing her shoulders. "We need to confront this. We can't run from it." Her gaze snapped back to me, clarity flooding her expression. "You're right, Taven, but you must be the one to face them. They are drawn to you." I hesitated. But what if they won't listen? What if they only want vengeance? "Then you must show them your truth," she urged, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You must confront the shadows of your past and acknowledge your role in their suffering." As I stood there, the shadows outside thickened, swirling like a storm ready to unleash its fury. I could feel the energy pulsing around me, an undeniable force that beckoned me forward. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I'll do it. I'll face them. Just as I stepped toward the door, the cabin shook again, and from the depths of the darkness, a figure emerged, cloaked in shadow and malice. It was the hunter, the very spirit that had warned us. His eyes burned with a fierce intensity, and he raised a hand, pointing directly at me. "You are the one who disturbed our peace. You must answer for your actions." I swallowed hard, my throat tight with fear. I know what I did. I know I led my team into danger, but I didn't mean for them to die. I was trying to protect them. The hunter's voice resonated like thunder. "Your intentions do not absolve you of your choices. You must confront the shadows of your guilt, or they will consume you." With every word he spoke, the air thickened, and the whispers of the forest grew louder, echoing my regrets. I could feel the shadows closing in, wrapping around me like a vice, suffocating and oppressive. My mind whirled with memories of that night, my team's laughter, their trust in me, and the moment it all shattered. "I will not run from this," I shouted, my voice breaking the barrier of despair surrounding me. "I will face my past." The shadows recoiled slightly, as if taken aback by my declaration. Ilara stepped beside me, her presence a tether to reality. "Together, Taven, We can face this together." I nodded, feeling the strength of her support. The hunter's gaze shifted, a flicker of something, curiosity or perhaps recognition, flashing in his eyes. "Then face it you shall, but be warned, the truth may be more than you can bear." With those words, I felt the ground tremble beneath us, and the shadows surged forward as if to engulf me. I took a step into the darkness, my heart pounding, ready to confront the ghosts of my past. I could feel Alara beside me, an anchor in the storm, as we plunged into the depths of the unknown, where the true reckoning awaited. As I plunged deeper into the shadows, a cacophony of voices erupted. Around me, echoes of laughter morphing into cries of despair. Each whisper pierced my mind, dragging me back to that fateful night. I felt the weight of guilt pressing down on my chest, suffocating me, as memories swirled, my team's faces, their smiles, and the moment everything went wrong. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into distorted figures, faces twisted in anger and sorrow. They advanced toward me, their eyes hollow voids reflecting my deepest fears. "You led us to our doom," one of them wailed, and I staggered back, the truth of their accusation hitting me like a physical blow. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. "I thought I was protecting you." But my words fell like stones into a relentless tide, and the figures surged closer, their wailing intensifying. I could feel Alara's hand grasping mine, grounding me in this storm of anguish. "Face them, Taven," she urged, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You must confront your truth." Drawing strength from her presence, I stepped forward, my voice trembling but resolute. "I acknowledge my failure. I was reckless and selfish, and I am so sorry." The moment the words left my lips, the shadows paused, their anguished faces flickering as if considering my confession. In that instant, the hunter reappeared, his gaze piercing into my soul. "Only through acceptance can you find peace," he intoned, and with a wave of his hand, the shadows began to recede, their forms dissolving into the air like mist. But as the darkness lifted, I felt the weight of something more profound settle in my heart, a scar that would never fully heal. The forest around us grew still, the laughter replaced by an eerie silence, and I knew the confrontation had come at a cost. I had survived, but the emotional wounds would linger long after this night. Alara squeezed my hand, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. "We did it, Taven. But what about the others?" she asked, looking toward where the shadows had faded. I glanced at the remnants of their sorrow, knowing their fates were now intertwined with my own. Maybe they're still lost," I murmured, contemplating the implications of my confrontation. The hunter's words echoed in my mind, suggesting that while I had faced my guilt, the mystery of the forest and its spirits remained unresolved. As we stepped back into the cabin, the air felt charged with something unexplained. I noticed a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow darting just beyond the threshold. Was it one of them? I shivered, sensing that this was not the end. There were still unanswered questions, fragments of a story yet to be told. Alara looked at me, her brow furrowed with concern. "What do we do now?" I weighed my options, the remnants of the night swirling in my mind. "We need to uncover the truth behind this forest. There's something deeper here, a connection we haven't yet grasped." As I glanced back at the darkened woods, I felt the pull of the unknown, the promise of more mysteries lurking just out of sight. The hunter's warning rang in my ears. My past was just a thread in a much larger tapestry, one that had yet to be fully unraveled. "Let's find out what it wants from us," I said, determination igniting within me. The shadows may have receded for now, but I knew they would return, and this time I would be ready. As I stepped out of the cabin, the air was thick with uncertainty. Alara and I stood at the edge of the forest, the moon casting an ethereal glow on the twisted trees. With each step closer to the darkened woods, I felt the weight of the past pressing on my shoulders, mingling with the exhilaration of what lay ahead. "What if we uncover something we can't handle?" Elara whispered, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Then we'll face it together," I replied, my voice steady, despite the tremor of doubt within me. The path before us seemed to shift, as if the trees were alive, breathing in the secrets they had guarded for so long. I could almost hear the echoes of my team, their laughter now a haunting melody interwoven with the cries of the lost. As we ventured deeper, the forest closed in around us, shadows darting just out of sight. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, and the air crackled with a tension that promised revelations, both terrible and profound. I glanced back at Elara, who was now staring intently at the darkness, her expression a blend of fear and fascination. Suddenly, the hunter's words returned to me. "Only through acceptance can you find peace." But acceptance of what? The weight of guilt? The shadows of my past? Or perhaps the truth of this forest and what it demanded of us? In that moment, I realized the answers would not come easily. They were hidden within the labyrinth of memories. And the forest wasn't just a backdrop. It was a living entity, feeding off our struggles and regrets. As we pressed on, the darkness seemed to pulse, and I felt a pull, a call to the unknown, that both terrified and intrigued me. Were we destined to uncover the truth, or would we become part of its haunting tapestry? I turned to Elara, ready to voice my thoughts, but the words caught in my throat. In the depths of the forest, anything was possible. The shadows danced at the edges of my vision, whispering promises and threats alike. The choice loomed before us, heavy with ambiguity. "Let's go," I finally said, my heart racing. We stepped further into the shadows, knowing that whatever awaited us could forever change the course of our lives, or perhaps bind us to this place of sorrow and mystery. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. Do you believe the forest remembers? I asked myself as I ventured deeper into Aokigahara, the infamous Sea of Trees. The air felt thick with secrets, each rustle of leaves whispering stories of the past, tales of those who had wandered here and never returned. Today, I had stumbled upon an origami tsuru, its delicate wings seemingly frozen in time, dangling from a branch like a forgotten wish. The moment my fingers brushed against its paper surface, life surged through it, and the bird took flight, soaring toward the heart of the woods before crumpling to the ground, leaving behind only a chilling message written in blood-red kanji: "The forest does not forget." As a former police officer turned forest guardian, I had come to Aokigahara seeking solace after the loss of my father, who had met his end within these very trees. The ancient legends of Yurei, restless spirits, bound to their grudges, echoed in my mind as I patrolled the dense underbrush, my heart heavy with the weight of my own past. My cabin, nestled at the forest's edge near the small town of Fuji Kawaguchiko, was adorned with shide, the protective talismans my father had hung to ward off malevolent spirits. Yet, despite his efforts, I had always avoided the areas marked by red plastic tape, the grim indicators of lives lost and souls trapped in the ethereal limbo between this world and the next. It's strange how the forest, a living entity in its own right, can feel both familiar and alien. The towering cedar trees loomed over me, their gnarled branches intertwining like skeletal fingers, casting shadows that danced across the ground. As I walked, the scent of damp earth and moss filled my lungs, grounding me while simultaneously awakening my deepest fears. I could almost hear the echoes of my father's voice, warning me of the dangers lurking within the shadows, the whispers of the Yurei calling out for acknowledgement, for recognition of their pain. Hours later, the tranquility of my patrol shattered. When I heard the faint, haunting melody of Toriansi, a children's folk song, it drifted through the trees like an ethereal breeze, beckoning me to follow. My heart raced as I traversed the undergrowth, but the song abruptly ceased, leaving me standing alone amidst the gnarled roots and twisted trunks. I found only a broken Hanya mask, its once vibrant colors now muted and cloaked in moss. It stared back at me, a silent reminder of the spirits that roamed this land, caught between their unresolved grievances and the world of the living. But the forest held more than just echoes of the past. It bore the weight of a terrible secret. I had recently uncovered the truth about my father's demise. He had not taken his own life. Rather, he had been chosen by the forest as a sacrifice to appease the restless Urei trapped between realms. I had inherited his role without knowing it, thrust into a legacy steeped in sorrow and obligation. The forest was calling for me to fulfill that legacy, to become the guardian my father could not escape from. As night began to cloak the forest in darkness, I received word of a documentary crew that had come to Aokigahara to film an urban ritual, their intentions naive and reckless. They had set foot into the depths of the trees, and now they were missing, lost to a world that demanded tribute. The weight of the decision rested heavily on my shoulders. Should I guide them back to safety, risking the escape of vengeful spirits into our world, or surrender them to the forest, perpetuating the cycle of sacrifice my father had tried to break? But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As I stood there, the air thickening around me like a gathering storm, I felt the weight of the forest pressing in. The decision was mine to make, and the responsibility felt like a noose tightening around my throat. I could turn back, but the thought of those lost souls, wandering aimlessly, clawed at my conscience. I was their guardian now, a position I had never asked for. Yet, here I was, caught between the living and the dead. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow through the trees, illuminating the path ahead just enough for me to see the shadows shifting in the corners of my vision. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the creeping dread. That was when I heard them, faint voices whispering my name, echoing through the branches. I turned sharply, my heart racing. The forest was alive, and it was watching. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a clearing, the ground littered with the remnants of campfires and discarded equipment. The documentary crew had set up their base here, their bright lights, and cameras stark against the surrounding darkness. I could see their silhouettes moving about, laughter ringing out, a stark contrast to the seriousness of the place they had chosen to invade. "Hey, you! Over here!" a voice called out, cutting through the thick atmosphere. I recognized it as Jake, the crew's director. A brash man with a penchant for sensationalism. He was gesturing wildly, excitement radiating from him. "You've got to see this. The forest is incredible, isn't it?" I forced a smile. But inside, a knot of anxiety twisted tighter. "You shouldn't be here, Jake. The forest, it has a way of..." "Of what?" he interrupted, his laughter somewhat dismissive. "Of being spooky? Come on, we're here to show the world what Aokigahara really is. A place of beauty, not just a graveyard." I glanced around, spotting the others. Sarah, the ambitious producer, eager to make her mark. Tom, the sound engineer with a penchant for the supernatural. And Lisa, the camera operator who seemed more fascinated than fearful. They were all so young, so full of life, unaware of the darkness lurking beyond the trees. "Listen, I know you think this is just another adventure, but I started, but before I could finish, the forest seemed to echo my words back at me, a rustling that felt like a warning. "See?" Jake laughed again, but there was an edge to it. "You're just spooking yourself. This is what we're here for. The thrill, the legends. You're just scared because of your dad." The mention of my father sent a chill through me. I could feel the shadow of his legacy looming over us, the burden of his unfinished business becoming my own. "You don't understand," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "This place..." Suddenly Lisa screamed, pointing toward the tree line. Did you see that? Something moved. There's something out there. The laughter died in an instant, replaced by a palpable tension. I moved closer to her, trying to see what she had seen, but the trees stood silent, their secrets hidden behind layers of darkness. "Okay, let's not panic," Tom said, his voice steadier than mine felt. "It's probably just a deer or something. Let's get the cameras rolling." But the unease had settled deep within me. I could feel the forest shifting, as if it were a living, breathing entity. The very essence of Aokigahara was changing. The air thick with an energy that felt almost predatory. "Guys," I said, my voice low and urgent, "you need to leave. Now. This isn't a game." But Jake scoffed, his bravado returning. "We're not afraid of a little superstition. We're here to tell a story, and I won't back down now." As they resumed their preparations, I felt a surge of panic. The night was deepening, and I knew the forest's patience was running thin. I glanced back toward the shadows, feeling a presence watching us. The forest was growing restless, and I had to make a choice: protect them from the wrath of the spirits, or let them confront the consequences of their recklessness. And then, from the depths of the trees, a low, mournful wail echoed through the air, freezing us in place. I knew then that we were not alone, and the forest was ready to remind us of its power. As the wail reverberated through the trees, a chill raced down my spine. I turned to the crew, my heart pounding. They looked just as stunned as I felt, frozen, like deer caught in headlights. The laughter had faded, replaced by an unshakable tension that hung in the air like fog. I could see the uncertainty in their eyes, the bravado dissipating as the reality of our situation began to sink in. "Did you hear that?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, the sensation of something ancient and powerful swirling around us, tightening my chest. I had heard that sound before. Growing up, my father would tell stories of the forest's voices, the anguished cries of those who had lost their way. I had always dismissed them as tales meant to frighten a child. But now those stories felt terrifyingly real. "Maybe it's just an animal," Tom suggested weakly, though even he didn't sound convinced. I could see it in his eyes. The spark of curiosity had dimmed, replaced by a flicker of fear. "Stop," I urged, my voice rising above the stillness. "This isn't just an adventure. You have no idea what you're messing with." The forest wasn't just a backdrop for their thrill-seeking antics. It was a living entity, one that held secrets and sorrow. I could almost feel the weight of those lost souls pressing down on me, urging me to act. But before I could gather my thoughts, the ground beneath us trembled slightly, and the wind picked up, swirling through the clearing with an unnatural force. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the trees, pale and translucent, drifting like mist. I stumbled back, my heart racing. "What the hell is that?" Jake shouted, his bravado shattered. The apparition seemed to glide closer, its mournful expression frozen in a silent scream. I recognized the figure. It was a woman, one I had seen in my nightmares since childhood. She was one of the lost souls my father had tried to protect, a woman who had fallen prey to the forest's darkness, her spirit forever trapped. "Your father," the ghostly figure whispered, her voice echoing in my mind. "He couldn't save me. He couldn't save any of us." My breath hitched in my throat. The realization struck me like a lightning bolt. My father hadn't just been a guardian. He had been a failure. The weight of his legacy pressed down on me, and I felt the walls of my sanity beginning to crack. Had I inherited his burden, or was I doomed to repeat his mistakes? "Get back!" I shouted, instinctively moving to shield the crew from the apparition. But as I turned, I noticed something strange. The crew members were staring at the figure, their expressions a mix of fear and fascination. Jake's eyes gleamed with a reckless excitement, as if he were finally getting the thrill he had sought. "Wait! This is amazing!" he exclaimed, moving closer to the ghost. "We have to film this!" "No," I yelled, desperation creeping into my voice. "You don't understand. She's not here to entertain you. She's..." But before I could finish, the forest erupted in a cacophony of wails and whispers, drowning out my words. The very ground seemed to shake, and I felt a surge of energy, dark and oppressive, wash over me. The forest was alive and it was angry. In that moment, all of my childhood fears came rushing back, and I realized that I was not just fighting for the crew's safety, I was confronting my own demons. The truth was more complex than I had ever imagined. My father had failed, yes, but perhaps there was more to his story, more to this forest than I had ever known. As the wailing intensified, I felt a surge of determination. I had to uncover the truth, not just for the crew, but for myself. I had to confront the shadows of my past, and in doing so, perhaps I could save us all. But as I looked back at the crew, I saw the glint of something in their eyes. Fear, yes, but also a thirst for revelation that mirrored my own, and that realization terrified me more than anything the forest could throw at us. The wails grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest, and I felt the weight of the forest pressing in on me. I turned to face the crew, their expressions a mix of fear and awe, and I knew we were at a crossroads. This was no longer just about escaping, it was about confronting the very essence of what haunted us. Listen to me, I shouted over the chaos. This forest isn't just a backdrop, it's alive, and it feeds on our fears. But the urgency in my voice only seemed to heighten their fascination. Jake took another step forward, his camera aimed at the ghostly figure. "Don't," I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. "You think this is a show? This isn't entertainment? It's a warning." But Jake was lost in the moment, oblivious to the danger creeping closer. The others hesitated, torn between fear and the allure of the unknown. Suddenly, Lisa grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with panic. "What if we can help her?" she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe she's trapped, just like your father said." Her words struck me like a dagger. Help her? I couldn't even help myself. "No," I replied, shaking my head. "You don't know what you're asking. You don't know what she's capable of." But even as I spoke, I felt a pull, a connection to the woman before us. I was drawn to her sorrow, her despair. It mirrored my own, and I realized I was being tested, not just by the forest, but by the shadows of my past. The figure drifted closer, her expression shifting from anguish to something almost pleading. "Help me," she whispered, her voice slicing through the cacophony, chilling me to the bone. "You can break the cycle." I felt the ground tremble again, a warning sign that the forest was losing patience. I had to make a choice. I could turn away, save myself and the crew, or I could confront this nightmare head-on, risking everything in the hope of redemption. "Jake, put the camera down," I shouted, stepping forward despite the fear gnawing at my insides. "This isn't a game." But he didn't budge. Instead, he grinned, a reckless abandon igniting in his eyes. "You're just scared, man. This is our chance to be legends." My heart raced as I realized what was happening. Jake wasn't just seeking thrills. He was hungry for glory, willing to risk everything for a story that could make him famous. And I was standing in the way. "You don't understand," I yelled, my voice breaking. "This isn't about fame, it's about survival." As the wails crescendoed, I felt the energy around us shift, dark and suffocating. I locked eyes with the ghostly woman, a silent understanding passing between us. I had a choice to make. I could embrace the darkness and confront the truth of my father's legacy, or I could let it consume me, letting the cycle of loss continue. In that moment, I felt the weight of my father's mistakes and my own fears coalesce into a single, undeniable truth. I had to confront the forest, not just for me, but for all the souls trapped within it. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the storm ahead, and stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay beyond the veil of the unknown. The tension hung heavy in the air as I prepared to confront the very essence of my fears. The forest whispered its secrets, and I knew I was about to uncover the truth that had haunted me for so long. The moment I stepped forward, the air shifted around me, thickening with a tangible tension. The wails of the forest crescendoed into a deafening roar, and I felt a surge of energy pulse through the ground beneath my feet. I could sense the weight of the forest's sorrow pressing down on me, a collective consciousness desperate for recognition. I squared my shoulders, forcing myself to meet the ghostly figure's gaze. "Help me," she repeated, her voice echoing like a distant chime. I took a tentative step closer, feeling the pull of her despair. "You can break the cycle," she urged, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I reached out, and as our fingers brushed, an electric shock coursed through me. Memories flooded my mind, my father's face twisted in anguish, the secrets he had carried, the pain he had tried to shield me from. The forest was not just a prison for this woman. It was a keeper of all the souls lost to fear and regret. With a guttural scream, the energy erupted around us, swirling into a tempest of shadow and light. I stood firm, channeling every ounce of courage I had, and spoke the words I had long buried inside me. "I forgive you," I cried out, not just to her, but to the specters of my past. In that instant, the forest shuddered. The wails transformed into a haunting melody, a mournful song that carried the weight of countless lives. I felt the energy shift again, and as the ghostly figure began to dissolve into mist, I gasped as the forest itself seemed to exhale, releasing the tension that had coiled around us. But even as the chaos subsided, I felt a deep ache settle within me. I had confronted the darkness, but it had left its mark. My chest throbbed, and a cold sweat coated my skin. I could see the crew, their faces pale with shock, Lisa trembling beside me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Jake, still clutching his camera, looked both exhilarated and terrified. "What just happened?" Lisa stammered, her voice trembling. I turned to her, knowing we had crossed a threshold together. I think we helped her," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. Had we truly broken the cycle, or had we merely scratched the surface of a deeper mystery? But then I noticed Jake, his expression shifting from triumph to confusion. "What do we do now?" he asked, as if the thrill of the moment had been stripped away, leaving only the raw edges of reality. "We leave," I replied firmly, but the weight of the forest lingered in my mind. As we turned to go, I caught a glimpse of something in the underbrush, a flicker of movement, a shadow darting between the trees. My heart raced. The forest may have released one spirit, but what other secrets lay hidden in its depths? As we stumbled back through the dense foliage, the air felt charged, as if the forest was watching us, waiting for our next move. I could sense a lingering presence, the whispers of the lost echoing in my ears. The mystery was far from over. It had only just begun. And as I glanced back one last time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had awakened something deeper, something that might demand our attention again. The forest was alive, and its stories were far from finished. As we navigated the tangled roots and brambles, I felt the weight of the forest pressing down on me, heavy with unuttered truths. The vibrant energy that had surged moments before now felt like a lingering wound, a reminder of the spectral encounter we had just escaped. Yet the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, whispering secrets I was too afraid to fully comprehend. Did we really help her? Lisa's voice broke through my reverie, but I couldn't answer her. Deep down, I felt an unsettling truth coiling in my gut. I could still hear her voice, echoing like a soft breeze in my mind, urging me to confront my own darkness. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my chest, and I stumbled, grasping at the air, as if to steady myself against an invisible force. The energy that had once surged through me now felt like a curse, a reminder of the bond I had forged with the unknown. I was not just a witness. I had become part of this forest story, part of a cycle that seemed unbreakable. We emerged from the trees, but I was not the same. The forest had marked me, and I could sense it, an unshakable connection to the supernatural that pulsed beneath my skin. I turned to my friends, my voice trembling. "I don't think I can go back to how things were. I feel changed." Lisa's eyes widened, and Jake's face fell. "What do you mean?" "I think I'm cursed," I confessed, my heart racing. "I can't escape this. I can feel it inside me, an energy that won't let go." As the realization sank in, I understood with chilling clarity that my supernatural condition had no cure. I was bound to the forest, tethered to its sorrows and secrets forever. The forest sighed, its whispers echoing in the distance. I had released one spirit, but in doing so, I had awakened my own. And as we walked away, I could feel the shadows drawing closer, waiting for the moment I would be drawn back into their embrace. The mystery of the forest still lingered, a haunting melody that would play on repeat in my mind, reminding me that some curses were meant to endure. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below, telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. What if the forest you've sworn to protect harbors an ancient curse, ready to awaken at your slightest breath? I often ponder this question as I tread the winding paths of the Carpathian Mountains, where shadows dance beneath the towering trees and whispers of the past echo through the underbrush. My name is Vasile Dragomir, the latest guardian of these haunted woods, a duty passed down through generations, each one burdened with secrets and shadows darker than the night itself. It was a sweltering summer afternoon when I stumbled upon the apito de oso, an ancient bone whistle carved with runes that seemed to pulsate with life. It hung from the gnarled branches of a solitary oak, its leaves brittle and brown, defying the vibrant green all around. The air thickened with a sense of foreboding as I plucked the artifact from its perch, my fingers tingling with an unknown energy. Curiosity got the better of me, and I blew into the whistle. A haunting melody poured forth, one that twisted through the trees like a ghostly lament. The ground trembled as a tempest rolled in, uprooting centuries-old trees in spiraling chaos. I stood frozen, my heart racing, as a figure emerged from the swirling debris, a humanoid silhouette crowned with horns, its eyes gleaming like fiery coals. The apito clung to my palm, unwilling to let go, and a voice, deep and resonant, whispered in archaic Slavic, "The pact renasceth." I could hardly breathe, the weight of my legacy crashing down upon me. I was not merely a keeper of the woods. I was a link in a chain forged long ago, bound to secrets that had claimed my grandfather. His mysterious death haunted me, a dark shroud over my youth. Found buried beneath the earth, he appeared to have been laid to rest alive, his eyes forever closed to the world, leaving behind a cabin filled with cryptic journals that spoke of strigoi, undead entities that roamed these forests, preying on the living. Villagers in nearby Moitiu often whispered of them, their tales laced with fear and superstition. Yet, I had always suspected that the real threat lay in the greedy hearts of poachers, those who hunted the last of our rare wolves, carving paths of desolation through the forest. But that day marked a shift. As I explored deeper, the forest seemed to awaken, its breath quickening with each passing moment. I began to notice peculiar signs. Massive claw marks marred the bark of ancient trees, larger than any beast I had ever encountered. The hairs on my neck stood on end, an instinctual warning that something was terribly amiss. The forest, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, its walls closing in as an unsettling truth began to unfurl within me. The apito was more than a relic. It was a key to a world I could scarcely comprehend. I learned that it was a Dacian artifact, capable of rousing the strigoi from their slumber, creatures that demanded blood to sate their insatiable hunger. And as I stood at the precipice of destiny, a group of hunters infiltrated the woods, their sight set on the wolves I had sworn to protect. I found myself at a crossroads, summoned the strigoi to defend the forest, risking my own soul in the process, or destroy the apito, unleashing chaos upon the very land I cherished. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. The forest transformed under the cloak of darkness, shadows deepened, and the air became thick with an electric tension that made my skin crawl. I could hear the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl, yet something primal gnawed at the edges of my senses, warning me that I was no longer alone. The apito de oso dangled from my neck, a chilling reminder of the choice I had yet to make. As I ventured deeper into the woods, my heart pounded like a war drum. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting eerie patterns on the forest floor. Then I heard it, a low growl, primal and guttural. I turned to find a figure emerging from the shadows. At first, I thought it was one of the poachers, but as the moonlight revealed him, I gasped in recognition. It was Mihai, the village's blacksmith and an old friend. His face was pale, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and urgency. "Vasile, you need to leave this place," he shouted, his voice trembling. "The hunters are closing in, and there are things in these woods that no man should awaken." I didn't need to ask him what he meant. The stories of the Strigoi had been passed down like a dark heirloom in our village. Mihai had always been a skeptic, yet here he stood, visibly shaken. "You've found it, haven't you?" he continued, gesturing toward the apito that hung from my neck. "You've let loose something that should have remained buried. We need to destroy it before it's too late?" "Destroy it?" I echoed, incredulous. "It's our only chance to protect the forest. Those poachers will wipe out the wolves, and the Strigoi will consume you," Mihai interrupted, his voice rising. "I know what they are capable of. My grandmother spoke of them in hushed tones. They are not a shield, they are a curse." His words struck me like a physical blow, and I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I could feel the pulse of the apito, urging me to embrace its power, yet the fear etched on Mihai's face reminded me of the grave dangers I'd be unleashing. I backed away, torn between my duty to protect the forest and the potential cost of that protection. Before I could respond, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the night, chilling me to the bone. Mihai's eyes widened in horror. "They've found us!" He grabbed my arm, pulling me deeper into the trees, away from the sound. "We need to hide." We ducked behind a thicket, our breaths shallow as we pressed against the earth. Through the foliage, I could see the flickering lights of torches, the silhouettes of the hunters moving with stealth and purpose. They were armed, their voices low but laced with excitement. They were hunting, but their quarry wasn't just wolves. "They're looking for you," Mihai whispered, panic rising in his voice. "They know about the apito. They want it for themselves." As we watched, a figure broke away from the group, moving with a predatory grace. I squinted, recognizing the familiar outline of Elena, a local herbalist known for her wisdom about the forest. She was not just a healer, but also rumored to have ties to the supernatural. Why was she with them? What were her true intentions? "Mihai, we can't let them get the apito," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Elena, she might know more than she lets on. We need to confront her." Mihai's expression hardened. "You're playing with fire, Vasile. We don't know what she's capable of. You're risking everything." "Everything is already at stake," I shot back, the weight of my legacy bearing down heavily on my shoulders. "I've sworn to protect this forest, and I will not let it fall into their hands." As the hunters moved closer, I felt a surge of determination. I had to uncover the truth, not just about the apito, but about the Strigoi, the curse, and the very fabric of the forest I had devoted my life to protect. With a deep breath, I stepped out from our hiding place, ready to face the uncertainty ahead, knowing that the choices I made tonight could change everything. As I emerged from the thicket, adrenaline coursing through my veins, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the creeping tendrils of doubt. My heart raced as I approached the flickering lights of the hunters, my mind racing with memories of simpler days spent in the forest, free from the shadows that now seemed to envelop every tree. But I could not afford to dwell on those memories. Not now. The weight of the apito pressed against my chest, a constant reminder of the burden I had chosen to bear. As I stepped closer, I noticed something strange in Elena's demeanor. She appeared to be leading the hunters, her eyes gleaming with an intensity I had never seen before. I felt a chill run down my spine, and a whisper of doubt echoed in my mind. I had always trusted her wisdom, but what if her knowledge of the forest had twisted into something far more sinister? "Vasile," Mihai hissed, grabbing my arm urgently. "This isn't just a hunt. She's using them. She's manipulating." "The Strigoi," I hesitated, the truth of his words gnawing at me. The stories I had dismissed as folklore suddenly felt too real, too tangible. The forest was alive with secrets, and I was just a pawn in a game I barely understood. My past flickered through my mind. The tales of Strigoi I had brushed off, the losses I had endured when the balance of nature tipped into chaos. My father had once warned me about the power of ancient artifacts, his voice heavy with regret. "Some things are best left untouched, Vasile," he had said, but I had ignored him, driven by youthful arrogance. "Why are you doing this, Elena?" I called out, my voice trembling as I stepped into the light, forcing her to face me. "You've always claimed to protect the forest. Why are you with them?" She turned, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of something cold and calculating behind her eyes. "You don't understand, Vasile," she replied, her voice smooth yet laced with malice. "The forest has its own will, and it demands a price. You think the Apito will save it? You're merely a vessel, and soon you'll realize that." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as the implications of her words sunk in. I had always believed I was acting for the greater good, but what if the true cost of my actions was far greater than I had ever imagined? The hunters, emboldened by her presence, began to close in. I was caught in a web of betrayal, with both friend and foe shifting shapes around me. Mihai gripped my arm tighter, his eyes darting between Elena and the advancing hunters. "We need to get out of here! She's not who you think she is, Vasile!" But before I could respond, a sudden commotion erupted behind the hunters. The ground trembled beneath us as a low growl rose in pitch, resonating through the trees like a death knell. A massive shadow loomed in the darkness, and my heart sank as I recognized the unmistakable form of a Strigoi emerging from the underbrush, its eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. In that moment, the air crackled with tension, and I understood with terrifying clarity that the battle for the forest had only just begun. The lines between ally and enemy blurred, and I was left standing at the precipice of chaos, forced to confront the darkness within myself and the forest I had vowed to protect. Desperation clawed at my throat as I realized I had awakened something, ancient and malevolent, and now it was time to face the truth. I was not the only one burdened by the past. There were secrets buried deeper than the roots of the trees, and the night was only beginning to reveal their depths. The Strigoi loomed, larger than I had imagined, its breath a stench of decay that hung heavy in the air. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was rooted to the spot, caught between the threat of the creature and the betrayal of Elena. Mihai's grip on my arm tightened, a silent plea for action as the hunters shifted nervously behind us. "Stay close, Vasile," he urged, his voice a low hiss. "We can't let it see us divide." Elena's demeanor shifted once more, her eyes sparkling with a frenzied excitement that sent a chill down my spine. "You don't understand the power you hold," she said, her voice carrying an almost seductive allure. "This Strigoi is merely a tool, a sacrificial pawn in a game much larger than you comprehend. Embrace it." I felt the Apito against my chest, its energy pulsing with an intensity that mirrored my racing heart. Could it be true? Had I truly unwittingly awakened forces beyond my control? The tales of my father's warnings echoed in my mind, and I knew I had to choose. I could either stand by and let this chaos engulf me, or I could confront the darkness, head on. With a sudden resolve, I stepped forward, shaking off Mihai's grip. "No, I will not be a part of this," I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. The Strigoi shifted, its eyes narrowing as it fixated on me. In that moment, I felt every ounce of fear transform into something primal, a fierce determination to reclaim my own story. "Vasile, don't," Mihai shouted, but I was already moving toward the strigoi, the whispers of the forest urging me onward. I raised the Apito, its carved surface warm against my palm. I could feel the latent power within it thrumming, almost as if it were alive. This was my moment. I had to confront not just the creature before me, but the consequences of my choices. "Listen. To me," I called out, my voice steady. "You are not my enemy." The strigoi paused, its growl subsiding into a low rumble. I could see the conflict in its eyes, a flicker of recognition that stirred something deep within me. "You've been twisted by the darkness, but there is still a choice. We can break this cycle." Elena laughed, a sound that grated against the raw tension in the air. "You think you can save it? You're just a boy playing with toys he doesn't understand." But as I stood there, I felt Mihai's presence behind me, unwavering. The hunters, too, hesitated, their resolve faltering as they witnessed my defiance. I was not alone. I raised the Apito higher, channeling my determination through it, and the air crackled with energy. In a heartbeat, the forest responded. Roots erupted from the ground, wrapping around the strigoi's limbs, pulling it back, as if nature itself sought to reclaim what had been lost. The creature howled, but I held my ground, feeling the pulse of the Apito synchronize with the heartbeat of the forest. The chaos swirled around us, and in that moment I knew I could either let the darkness consume us all, or I could harness the light within me, guided by the memories of my father and the strength of my friends. The choice was mine to make, and I was ready to fight not just for the forest, but for my very soul. As the strigoi writhed against the roots, I took a deep breath and prepared for the confrontation that would determine our fate. The night was dark, but I was no longer afraid of the shadows. I was ready to face whatever came next. The roots tightened around the strigoi, and I felt an immense surge of energy coursing through me, merging with the power of the Apito. The creature's howl echoed through the night, but I stood firm, my heart drumming in sync with the pulsating rhythm of the forest. The hunters behind me exchanged anxious glances. Even Elena seemed momentarily taken aback by the spectacle. My resolve had shifted the tide, even if only for a moment. As the roots constricted, the strigoi's form began to shimmer, revealing glimpses of the tortured soul trapped within. I could sense its pain, its confusion, and I spoke to it softly, urging it to fight against the darkness that sought to claim it. "You have the strength to break free," I shouted, channeling every ounce of hope I could muster into those words. The strigoi's eyes flickered again, a spark of recognition igniting behind the veil of malevolence. But just as I felt the tide beginning to turn, the ground trembled violently beneath us. A shadow loomed in the periphery, and I turned just in time to see a figure emerging from the woods, a dark silhouette with an aura of malevolence that sent my heart racing. The air crackled with tension, and I realized this wasn't just a battle for the strigoi's soul, it was a confrontation with something far more sinister. "Release it," the figure commanded, voice dripping with authority and malice. It was a voice I recognized, a voice that whispered promises in the dark. My blood ran cold as I realized I had awakened forces I hadn't intended to disturb. I grasped the Apito tighter, feeling its warmth slip beneath my fingers. But the momentary distraction was enough to loosen the root's grip, allowing the strigoi to lash out in rage. I stumbled back, a sharp pain shooting through my side as I collided with a tree. The hunters surged forward, weapons drawn, and I could see Mihai's face contorted with determination and fear. "Vasile!" he shouted, but I was lost in the chaos, pain radiating from my wound and fear clawing at my chest. As the strigoi broke free, its eyes locked onto mine, a moment of clarity passing between us. It wasn't just a monster, it was a victim, just as I was. I felt a deep connection, but before I could act, the shadowy figure lunged and the strigoi vanished, swallowed by the night. In the aftermath, I gasped for breath, the weight of the confrontation settling on my shoulders. The hunters stood in a protective circle around me, their expressions a mix of concern and disbelief. "What just happened?" one of them asked quietly, glancing at the darkened woods. Elena, now more a specter than a threat, retreated into the shadows, her laughter echoing faintly. "You think this is over? You've merely scratched the surface," she taunted, leaving behind a chilling unease that settled over us like fog. Mihai knelt beside me, his eyes wide with worry. "You're hurt," he said, gently probing my side. I winced, but the pain was a reminder of my choice. A choice that had shifted the balance, but had not resolved the darkness entirely. The forest hummed around us, alive yet restless, and I could still sense the Strigoi's presence lingering, a specter of what could have been. What if it returns, I wondered aloud, more to myself than to anyone else. The question hung heavy in the air. As we made our way back through the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There were layers of mystery yet to unravel, paths that led deeper into the darkness. The forest whispered secrets I had yet to learn, and the shadows hinted at a larger game at play, one that involved not just me, but the fate of all those I cared about. I looked back one last time, a shiver running down my spine. The night was far from over, and I knew I would have to prepare for the battles ahead, not just for myself, but for Mihai and the hunters who had stood by my side. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to confront it. The scars I bore would not define me. They would fuel my resolve to uncover the truth and confront the darkness that still loomed, waiting for its moment to strike again. As we pressed onward through the dense thicket, the weight of our recent encounter clung to me like a shroud. The remnants of the Strigoi's soul lingered in my mind, an echo of anguish that I was desperate to understand. But amidst the chaos, a deeper darkness stirred, a corruption that had been awakened within our ranks. Mihai moved closer, his concern palpable, yet I felt a shift within myself, an unsettling hunger that clawed at my heart. The whispers of the shadowy figure echoed in my mind, promising power and control, tempting me to embrace the darkness rather than fight it. It was intoxicating, a seductive pull that began to drown out my resolve. In the days that followed, I noticed changes in the hunters. They grew restless, their eyes flickering with shadows of doubt and fear. I watched as one by one they succumbed to the darkness, their spirits twisted by the very evil we had sought to vanquish. Mihai, once my steadfast ally, began to drift, the light in his eyes dimming as the corruption seeped into his soul. I tried to fight it, tried to reach out to him, to those who still held hope. But the more I struggled, the stronger the pull became. I felt the roots of the forest wrap around me once more, but this time they were not a source of strength. They were a reminder of my failure. As I stood amidst the remnants of our shattered group, I realized the truth. I was the last bastion against the encroaching darkness, yet I was also becoming its vessel. The choice was no longer mine to make. I was slipping, losing myself to the very force I had vowed to resist. In that moment, I understood that the darkness was not just an external enemy, it was within me, and I was becoming its harbinger. The forest whispered my name, calling me deeper into its embrace. I felt the twisted laughter of the creature that had once been a Strigoi echoing in my ears. As the last flicker of light in my heart dimmed, I surrendered to the shadows, knowing that I had become what I feared most, a lost soul consumed by the very evil that had once haunted me. And with that, the forest fell silent, awaiting the next chapter of the darkness that now had a new bearer. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more tales that delve into the shadows. Share with your friends so they can embark on this mystery-filled adventure too. And leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.